Brooklyn Independent Television.
Large corporations get their supplies and their products from other large corporations, right? It's all about economies of scale. When they buy, it pays to buy in bulk. At least that's the conventional wisdom. But what if smaller firms could get in on the action? What would it mean, not just to them, but to the economy as a whole? The Center for an Urban Future, a leading policy think tank, has been looking into this and has just published a study called Breaking into the Corporate Supply Chain. Its author, Mark Foggin, a consultant to nonprofits and government agencies, joins me now. We also welcome Alexandra Farkas, Director of Communications for Ericsson Translations, a Brooklyn Heights company that works with a number of giant clients. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Mark, what was the impetus behind this report?
The Center for an Urban Future is always looking at issues around economic development and smart policies that help the economy here in New York City to grow, especially with respect to small businesses. So, and Randy, as you know, small businesses are the jobs engine in this country and in Brooklyn in particular. A stunning number, something like 2/3 of all the new jobs created in the last 15 years came from small businesses, those with under 100 employees or fewer. The IBM Foundation approached us at the same time and asked if they could fund a study to help identify opportunities that large corporations like IBM could use to help small businesses grow and to create more jobs in the economy.
What were some of the key findings from the report?
Well, the good news is that there's a huge opportunity there for large corporations to be helping small businesses to grow. Corporations spend hundreds of billions of dollars a year collectively, and data is hard to come by in this respect, but from what we could tell, the typical large corporation spends about 10% of that with small businesses each year. So given the huge amount of money that they're spending, moving that needle just a few percentage points could really mean tens of billions of dollars of new business for small firms. On the sort of other side of the coin, though, is the challenge that many small firms face in figuring out how to access large corporate companies as clients. There's certainly a scale issue. It's very hard for small businesses to compete with other large corporations who can provide many commodities at better prices or in greater volumes than small businesses are able to. And it's also hard for small businesses to figure out who they should be reaching out to in large corporations in order to try and make a contact and make a sale.
So who within that corporation is the person to...
And that's the great question. You know, if you're a small IT company, sort of an upstart that has in fact a great product that you think will help a large corporation with their e-commerce platform, do you pitch the person in charge of e-commerce? Do you pitch the person in charge of the IT systems at that company? Is it somebody in the purchasing unit? It's really hard for them to, there's this sort of black box in which these companies operate that's really hard for small firms to figure out how to get into.
So Mark, I understand that many of the small businesses that participated in this study were actually based here in Brooklyn.
That's right. We talked to about 36 businesses across the country, but many of them were here in New York. And in particular, we spoke with Ericsson Translations here in Brooklyn, who gave us some really great examples of what the challenges and benefits are to being a small business that supplies large corporations.
Alexandra, tell us what Ericsson Translations does and how did working with a large corporate client impact your business model?
Ericsson Translations is a comprehensive language services provider. We serve a large range of organizations in over 100 languages. We have an office here in Brooklyn, which we're headquartered at, but we also have an office in San Diego as well as in Argentina. Becoming a supplier for a large corporation was huge for us. It was almost 20 years ago when we were 5 years old. We started working on a small level for a major manufacturer of heavy equipment. And as our relationship with them grew and we got a contract, it was a sizable boost to our revenue, and that allowed us to really change how we do business from sort of a strategic point of view.
So approximately how much of an increase in revenue did you see in that first year?
I believe in the first year it was probably about 20%, and then it continued to grow from there to, I think in the end it ended up being about, at its greatest point, it was about 30%.
So what are some of the challenges that Ericsson currently faces in working with larger corporations?
Well, Going global is really great for us. Obviously, as a translation company, we want to be able to provide languages to large corporations. But the flip side of it means that procurement is also going global, and it's becoming far more centralized. So big businesses like doing business with big businesses because they can do it far more simply, or at least they think so. And so there's a lot of cost pressure. But the flip side of that for us is the relationships that we have allowed us to build a rapport and really understand what it is that our clients need in a way that sometimes large corporations aren't able to do.
So in the example that you used, talking about that first client, large client, how did that work out long term for the company?
As our relationship with them grew, we got to know them a lot better, and in fact some of our Danish linguists went to their Danish distributor and really understood what it is that they wanted, the language that they needed to use. Excavation is very technical. Danish is not a very broadly spoken language, so we really got in there, and we had a really great relationship with them, but then things changed and they made a strategic decision to change the way they procured languages. They got rid of their in-house language department and they started giving all of their language services to some of the really, really big guys.
And this is one of the things we found in doing our research was there is this extraordinary pressure to reduce costs at all levels in the economy. And large corporations face this as well. It creates a lot more of an incentive for them to go to larger providers and suppliers who can often provide things at lower prices. The problem is that for many of these types of specialized services that lend themselves to a great degree of customer care or customization, you can't really get that at the lower prices. And so there's this opportunity for these small firms, if they can sort of keep their head above water with respect to competing on price, to really fill in that niche for these larger corporations.
One of the things we sometimes like to say is that sometimes the cheapest is the most expensive. Because what it ends up meaning for large corporations, particularly with niche services like you said about us, is if it's not done right the first time, it has to be done again. There is a lot at stake for them. For instance, if we're doing compliance translation or contract translation, if that contract's not translated correctly, they can get into a lot of hot water down the line. So it can be more expensive through litigation, or it can be more expensive just doing it over and over and over again until you get it right.
So the flexibility is certainly one advantage to working with the small businesses, the customization. What else, Mark? What are some of the other advantages that a corporation has in terms of turning to small businesses?
There's also an ability to get more innovative solutions to some of your more difficult problems. If you're dealing with a small corporation or a small company, it's easier sometimes to get the kind of really focused thinking around a particularly troubling problem. When you're buying services or goods from a large corporation, you may get a better price, but you're going to get the standard, whatever they sort of offer as a standard. It's going to be really hard for you as a customer to be able to ask to have things provided either in a different format or perhaps a focused or customized service. There's also an increasing amount, because of this consolidation of suppliers, fewer and fewer companies are providing more and more goods and services to large corporations. If any one of those companies fails, and we've seen that happen in the course of the last 2 years in this downturn, it really is a sort of a vulnerability for large corporation supply chains. Large corporations do themselves a favor by having a greater number of diverse suppliers that are smaller and more nimble, and therefore not putting all their eggs in a single basket with a single supplier.
There's also, I would think, an advantage in terms of turning locally if that large corporation has a presence in that local market, right?
We found that firms that could provide some local insight to a particular challenge. So I'm thinking now of one firm that was doing delivery and messenger services. Certainly there are global providers of that type of service, but the type of delivery services that this corporation needed really required an understanding of the local city in which they were working. And the most cost-effective solution for them was looking at a local provider, someone who really understood the environment well.
So getting back to your point just about where does a small business turn to within the corporate sort of bureaucracy to get their to make their pitch, can business assistance organizations like chambers of commerce or SBA organizations, can they be helpful in that respect?
We found two things. First of all, government sort of led the way in this with small businesses early on by making it easier for small businesses to bid on and compete for government contracts. Since then, corporations and government have been doing this to a much greater extent of their own volition. Corporations in particular have started to use sort of a more diverse group of suppliers as a way to demonstrate their commitment to a local economy. And in an era where consumers are becoming more conscientious, it's important for companies to demonstrate that they're contributing to those to that local economy.
Eriksen is actually a women-owned business, a certified women-owned business, both on the state and city level, as well as with WeBank, which is the national certifying organization for corporations, and that's been a really wonderful relationship for us. Supplier diversity departments within corporations are a really great place to start if you are a diverse supplier, because it's really, they can be your champion within the organization. They're really interested in making sure, it's their job to make sure that their supplier base is as diverse as possible, and if you can provide their in-house clients with the level of service or the whatever it is that they need at the best level that they need it at, you're going to be making them look good. And so they really enjoy those relationships.
And that's the other analog that we found, which is that the minority and women-owned business programs really provided an incredible opportunity for minority and women-owned businesses to become a greater part of the economy. And they did it not by creating set-asides or anything like that, but by giving those businesses opportunities to meet with the folks in corporations who are in charge of purchasing decisions. And at the end of the day, that's all any small business owner wants, is an opportunity to make his or her pitch to the right person to say why they think that their product is competitive with others.
They need things to go well. And sometimes often we can do it better than anybody else can, right? So for what ends up happening with us is that there's some corporations where we're already doing work with them, and then we get a relationship with the supplier diversity person, and they're excited to hear what we're doing, and then they're going to introduce us to somebody else who might be doing it. Oh, I heard somebody in marketing, in this other marketing of a different brand within this huge corporation is also looking to do some translation. Here, let me give you their number or their email. Let me set something up. So they're a really great conduit.
Great. Well, listen, thank you so much. The report was very, very insightful, and hope it's going to bring a lot of helpful information to our Brooklyn-based businesses and see more success stories like Ericsson Translations. So thank you both for being here.
Thank you very much.
Download this program's podcast on iTunes. Keywords Brooklyn Independent Television.